We get a ton of updates in Hypixel Skyblock, but there are some updates that the admins have come up with that never actually release or come to fruition. One of these updates is one of the most hyped updates around the time that it was being teased and leaked, and that update was the Slayer v2 update. So today we're just going to talk about the Slayer update that never came to be and why we don't have the tier 5 Slayers that were teased in this way back when. If you enjoy this video, I would really appreciate a like or a subscription. And also, there is a fire sale going on today with some pretty awesome skins. There's a Doge Wolf, there's a Nyan Cat, Black Cat, and then there's 2 runes. There's some pretty sick skins, and if you want any discount on this, you can get 5% off with code BANANA on the Hypixel store. Just use it at checkout. You can get 5% off of gems, boosters, ranks, you name it, you get a discount, and I get a little bit of a kickback. It'd really help me out, and I'd appreciate it a lot. As I'm sure a lot of you know, currently there are 6 Slayer bosses in the game. There's the Revenant Horror, the Tarantula Broodfather, the Sven Packmaster, the Void Gloom Seraph, the Riftwalker Blood Fiend, and the Inferno Demon Lord. But way back when this update was getting announced in 2020, I know this was pre-pandemic, back when this was announced, we only had the 3 original Slayers with the Rev, Terra, and Sven, so we were supposed to get tier 5s of all of these bosses, and not just tier 5s, we were supposed to get tier 6s. I'm sure that you guys know that we have a tier 5 Revenant, but we still have yet to see a tier 5 Sven and a tier 5 Tarantula boss. So it has been 3 years and nothing has come from this other than one part of the Revenant, and it definitely was not all of the stuff that was meant to be added. So let's just go over what this update looked like it was originally meant to be. Looking at a bunch of the leaks, the main thing that you're going to see is that there was 3 different versions of the Revenant tier 5. There was the Shredder Horror, the Revenant Warden, and there was the Atoned Horror, which is the boss that we have today. The Shredder Horror was going to be a guy who's just chucking axes at you, and you can definitely see this in the axe of the Shredded in the game, but this was definitely meant to specifically drop from the Shredder. This guy also starts just spinning around and doing a sick Beyblade attack and just throwing a lot of damage at you, and it looks like he also was spawning in some little mini bosses because there was a guy named Studio who got invited by Minikloon to just go look at this boss, and you can see that this guy is absolutely crazy. This boss looked pretty darn cool. It had 4.2 million health, and yeah, he was probably supposed to drop specifically something to make Axe of the Shredded, such as the Shard of the Shredded, or maybe he would have just dropped the weapon itself, but probably he was going to drop the Shard of the Shredded. The Revenant Warden was most likely meant to drop the Warden Helmet. This is going to be pretty obvious once again. This guy would spawn diamond blocks around him. Minikloon tweeted about this one. There's no actual footage about this guy, but I believe the diamond blocks were going to slow you down and you would have to shoot them or destroy them in order to continue doing the fight, or this guy would just start wailing on you. So the Revenant Warden was a pretty interesting guy. Last but not least, there was the Atoned Horror, the boss that we have now, and this was probably meant to drop something related to crafting the Wand of Atonement. There's not an RNG drop required to make it right now, but just based off of the name Atoned and the fact that the Wand of Atonement came out with this, it would just make sense that it was meant to do something related to this. So those were the 3 versions of the Revenant boss that got teased. We don't really know much about tier 6s, but we do know that there was an item called the Overtrude Detritus, and this is what was going to spawn the tier 6 Slayer boss. You would talk to Maddox with this item, and then you would use it to spawn a tier 6 Slayer. I believe Minikloon had posted somewhere and said that this was going to work by like charging up based on how many Slayers you have done. So you have to do a bunch of tier 5s where you're killing these random between the 3 different tier 5s. Then you would get an Overtrude Detritus, and then you would go and give that to Maddox and spawn in some bigger, higher health boss that probably has some even more sick drops. But as I said, we never got any actual pictures or ideas of what a tier 6 would look like. Other than that, we never got that much information on the other bosses because the other bosses never got screenshots. They never got even full posts. It was just some comments from Minikloon here and there. Some ideas that he said were the Reverso Broodfather that would turn healing into true damage. He also mentioned an Apache Broodfather, which would spawn 15 spiders on the ceiling that fire cobwebs and fireballs at you. Other than that, he mentioned that Sven's, like, some ideas he had for that was that one could be immune to crits and one could run super duper fast. He really didn't go super in depth on those, and it's clear why, because nothing from those has ever released. I still don't understand why they haven't done a community project for Sven and Tarantula T5, but they're clearly not out right now. I'm really glad that they didn't go the route of the randomized 3 T5s, because imagine you had to spawn in the specific tier 5 that you wanted, and then you had to get the absurdly rare drop from it at the same time. It would just make fighting this a pain in the butt. But it would be nice to see some T5s for at least Tarantula and Sven. It's been years. Minikloon said way back in the day that this was supposed to release in February of 2020. Maybe he meant February this year, because he did just say February. Maybe when Minikloon said Slayer V2 is coming out in February, he meant February 2024. So that's pretty much all the information we have on this update. I do think that it was looking like it could be a pretty cool update. Basically anything Minikloon makes is great, but clearly they have other plans in Skyblock other than Slayer V2 for some reason. Maybe they'll revisit this someday. Maybe the Apache Broodfather will release. But until then, we're stuck with the Slayers that we got. And that's going to be it for this video. I just wanted to recap you guys on some Skyblock leak history. And hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace out.